This is the Caretaker, and you are listening to The Graveyard Show.
Welcome to the Graveyard.
And welcome to another edition of the Graveyard Show podcast. I am your Caretaker, and the graveyard is open. In this edition, I'm going to select 5 movies that I would like to see included in the upcoming In Search of Darkness 70s documentary. Now, this has kind of become a tradition here on the Graveyard Show podcast. Whenever I have the writer and director of the In Search of Darkness movie series, David Weiner, on my podcast, I always like to follow that up with movies that I would like to see included in those different documentaries. I've done this for the multiple 80s documentaries he did, for the 90s, and now here we are in the decade of disco, the 1970s. So I'm going to pick 5 movies that I would like to see included. Now, they're not necessarily maybe popular movies or maybe the front and center films. We know we're going to get the gimmies that are going to be included, right? Jaws, The Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Amityville Horror, Dawn of the Dead. So we know that there are going to be staples that are going to be included in that 5, maybe even 6-hour documentary. So I tried to select some movies that might be a little bit more off the beaten path, or maybe some movies that might be on the fence in terms of making this series. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you get a little bit more of a visual element. But if you're listening to this on podcast, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as I select my 5 films for In Search of Darkness 70s. Now, the 1970s was the decade of disco, so, well, I decided to get us in the mood. And that's about it. That's all I can handle, really. It's something that I created, and I was going to play it under this whole thing, and it's just annoying, and I'm not going to do it. So we're going to do this without the music. You're welcome, and here we go. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, and I know there are some of you out there that are just so impatient that you just have to just jump ahead and see what's going on, I left timestamps down below in the show notes where you could jump ahead to all the movies so you don't have to actually sit and watch a 10-minute video. All right, let's get to it. Now, I knew my first movie was going to definitely be a vampire film, and 1970 definitely has a few to pick from. Now, for me, the obvious would have been Count Yorga Vampire, but I've learned over the years how incredibly popular that movie is, and to be honest, it's going to be in Search of Darkness 70s. Heck, it might even lead the whole movie off as the first overall movie. So I decided then to remove Count Yorga from my list and turn to, well, my all-time favorite horror movie actor, the great Christopher Lee, for inspiration. Now, Christopher Lee in his career made 8 Dracula movies, and he had 3 of them, that's right, 3 of them, were released in 1970. Taste the Blood of Dracula, Scars of Dracula, and the one non-Hammer Dracula movie he made, Jess Franco's Count Dracula. No wonder why he was so tired of playing Dracula. I don't blame him. Now, one of these movies is going to be the first pick on my list, and that film's going to be Scars of Dracula. What I like about Scars of Dracula is that it's the outlier in the Hammer series. And what I mean is that it just doesn't quite fit into the whole of the Dracula Hammer series. It just looks different, it feels different, and it's a film that could just live on its own without the other movies in the series. There are several other movie series that have that outlier film. For example, in the Halloween series, you could say that the outlier film is Part 3, Season of the Witch, obviously because, well, it's the one without Michael Myers, and it has a completely different story. In Friday the 13th, you could say that Part 5 would be that film. It's the Jason-less Jason movie that really doesn't affect the series. You could literally watch Part 4, skip Part 5, and watch Part 6, and you wouldn't miss anything. It wouldn't affect your viewing of the series at all. For the Nightmare on Elm Street series, I would say Nightmare Part 2, and no, it's not because of the gay themes in the film. You can tell from the first frame of Nightmare 2 that it's going to be a different looking film. Even the initial score of Nightmare 2 tells you that as well. It's more downbeat and almost tragic sounding than the original theme that Charles Bernstein created, which was much more of a dreamlike, mysterious, and almost seductive sound. Even Freddy coming into the real world felt very off. But I digress. Let's get back to Scars of Dracula. What I do like about Scars of Dracula is that it is different from the other Hammer Dracula movie sequels. It's darker in color, it's darker in tone. Christopher Lee actually gets to act in this film instead of just hissing, baring his fangs, and bossing people around. Also, Dracula is completely sadistic in this movie. He uses a hot poker to brand his henchmen, whose back is already a mess from having that done several times previously. Dracula kills the female vampire by stabbing her to death and then drinks her blood. It's everything that isn't present in the other films, and I love it. Scars is also a throwback to the original Dracula story. You have most of the action taking place in Dracula's castle. We have the henchman who does his bidding. We have angry villagers. And then there's that slaughter that happens within the first 5 minutes of the movie that's really disturbing. Now, for my second film, I'm turning to one of my favorite horror studios, Amicus Productions. Now, they were the competitor to Hammer Films and quite often hired Hammer talent to make their movies. Amicus is well known for their great anthology movies, and in the 1960s they had Dr. Terror's House of Horrors and Torture Garden, but in the 1970s they really kind of put their stamp on the genre with some classic anthologies like The House That Dripped Blood, Tales from the Crypt and its sequel, The Vault of Horror, From Beyond the Grave, and the movie that I'm picking as my second film from 1972, Asylum. Ironically, Asylum and Scars of Dracula were both directed by Roy Ward Baker, so I guess I really liked his work even more than I realized. Pure coincidence, I can assure you. The film stars Robert Powell, Patrick McGee, Try the Wine from Clockwork Orange, of course, Peter Cushing, Charlotte Rampling, Britt Eklund, and Herbert Lom. Now, it doesn't also hurt to have the man behind Psycho, author Robert Bloch, adapting 4 of his short stories for this film, and that makes a huge difference. Now, the premise is simple. In order to secure a job at a mental institution, a young psychiatrist must interview 4 patients in the asylum to determine which one of them used to be the doctor who was head of the asylum. The movie's really well-paced, has great performances, and it's creepy as hell. There's some great practical effects, and I have to say that the last 10 minutes of Asylum are pretty disturbing. It's a solid anthology. I highly recommend it, and that's all I need to say. Time for my third film, and we're going to move up 1 year to 1973, and it's one of my all-time favorite movies. It is the Gothic supernatural film, The Legend of Hell House. Based on Richard Matheson's classic horror novel Hell House, which is one of my favorite horror books, which he also adapted. The film follows a team of 4 people who are hired by a dying millionaire to investigate a haunted house to see if there really is life after death. The team consists of a psychiatrist, his wife, and 2 mediums, one of whom was almost killed years prior when he was part of another investigative team. The film stars Pamela Franklin, Roddy McDowell, Clive Revel, and Gail Honeycutt. And there's also an uncredited appearance by Michael Gough, who many of you would know as Alfred from the 1980s and 90s Batman films, and he was also Arthur Holmwood in Horror of Dracula. Now, The Legend of Hell House is moody, it's creepy, it's eerie, and it's any other E word that I can use to describe it. It's a slow, methodical crawl to get to the finale, and it is worth it. I used to watch this as a kid on TV in New Jersey, and it really left a mark on me. And it also left a mark on the filmmakers if you ever saw for the Grindhouse fake movie trailers that were done many years ago. You had Machete come out of that, which was made into a real movie, and then Thanksgiving, which Eli Roth turned into a real movie. Well, there was another of the fake movie trailers for a movie called Don't. Well, the premise of the opening of that is a complete takeoff on Legend of Hell House. So if you've never seen Legend of Hell House, when you watch the Don't fake movie trailer, That's what they're doing a takeoff on, as well as many other horror movies. The soundtrack to Legend of Hell House is more like sound design for the film. There's really not much to it as far as the soundtrack, but it is very effective. It brings the house to life, and it also gives you that feeling of loneliness and isolation surrounding our characters. You have great acting performances, especially by Pamela Franklin and Roddy McDowall as the mediums. Now, if you only know Roddy McDowall as Cornelius from the original Planet of the Apes series, you need to see this. You need to watch him in this. You need to watch him in anything he was ever in, especially the original Night Gallery pilot movie. He's in the first one, The Cemetery, with Ozzie Davis. It is awesome. Yeah, Roddy McDowall was a great fixture of my youth movie and TV viewing, because he was in a lot of movies, and as well as he played one of the villains, Bookworm, in the 66 Batman series as well. Now, you can do a double feature of The Legend of Hell House and The Haunting. That's a great haunted house double feature. But check out The Legend of Hell House. Now, on to my fourth film, and we're going to jump a little later into the decade. We're now entering 1977 for my next film, The Haunting of Julia, the other horror movie Mia Farrow starred in. Yes, I know she was also in See No Evil, but when people think of Mia Farrow starring in a horror movie, well, it's obviously Rosemary's Baby, and for a great reason. But The Haunting of Julia is a pretty good film as well. It's based on the Peter Straub book, Julia. It's about a family whose daughter dies tragically. Now, quickly, one of the things that I've noticed with 1970s horror movies is that there's this theme of parental loss of children. Don't Look Now, Who Saw Her Die, What Have You Done to Solange, Don't Torture a Duckling, Last House on the Left. It's a very interesting theme, and I'm going to have to talk to David about that when I have him back on the program, and why that theme was very prevalent during the 1970s. But let's get back to The Haunting of Julia. Mia plays Julia, and after the death of her daughter, she decides to leave her not-so-nice husband, played by Keir Dullea. Of course, we know him from Black Christmas and 2001, Open the Pod Bay Doors, Hal. This really isn't a film that gives him much to work with, so he's okay in the movie, and that's not his fault, because the movie's really about Julia. So Julia buys a new apartment in London, and it turns out that there might be a spirit in that very apartment. Is it good? Is it evil? Is it her daughter trying to contact her? Or maybe it's just all in her head. Well, you got to sit through the movie to find out. Now, this is one of those very good ghost stories, and even the director of the film, Richard Loncraine, says in the Blu-ray intro that it's not a perfect film, and it's not. There are plenty of flaws and points in the movie that drag, but this is just one of those movies where you have to overlook the flaws and just enjoy the tale that's being told. The score by Colin Towns is incredibly effective, beautiful, and tragic. I read somewhere that he wrote the score just based off the screenplay, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. But if that's the truth, I mean, he did an amazing job. It really plays well with the movie. And if you've seen the film, you know that last scene is really effective. And as a kid, again, in New Jersey, watching this on TV, they didn't edit the ending. And they let it play out to the very end. And, man, that stuck with me for a long time. When I really was trying to find this movie, that scene stuck in my head. And I was like, oh, my God, what was that? What was that? And when I finally found it, I was like, yes. And I was very pleased to rediscover the movie. So check out The Haunting of Julia from 1977. Okay, well, now it's on to my fifth and final film of my list that I would like to see included in Search of Darkness 70s. And I think this is the one that may not make it. And it's pretty obscure. Now, I will give you a hint. I started my list with a vampire movie, and I'm going to end my list with a vampire movie as well. And this one comes from 1979. And 1979 was a fantastic year if you were a fan of vampire movies. You had John Badham's Dracula, Frank Langella's turn at playing Dracula in the movies. And he, like Bela Lugosi, played Dracula on Broadway. And you can actually go back and find the I Love New York commercials from 1978. And it was all for Broadway, and one of them ends with Frank Langella doing his part as Dracula. It's very well done. It scared the hell out of me as a kid. Now when I look at it, I'm like, oh, there's nothing to it. But, you know, when you're 7 or 8, that stuff will just freak you out. But definitely check it out. They're fun. They're nice and nostalgic, and you'll see a lot of stars that were on Broadway back in that time. It's very cool. So you had that, and also, I mean, you had, getting back to Dracula, you had Laurence Olivier playing Von Helsing, you had Donald Pleasence playing Seward, and like I said with my interview on the last podcast with David Weiner, I don't think I ever saw anyone eat as much in a movie as Donald Pleasence did in Dracula. It's fantastic, and John Williams does the score. Highly recommend if you've never seen it, and you can see it in two different color tones, one with the warmer color tone, one with the really washed out color tone. There's also Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, starring Klaus Kinski, which was really, really solid movie. You have also, in 1979, the Salem's Lot miniseries, directed by Tobe Hooper. If you've not seen the miniseries version of it and just the straight-up movie, check out what Arrow did. Arrow Video has a release where you can get the movie as well as the miniseries, and I did get it, and I haven't seen the miniseries since it came out in 1979. I think that might be my favorite all-time vampire movie. If not, it might be top 3. But Salem's Lot is just a fantastic vampire movie. So well done. And it's done for TV, folks, back when censorship really existed on television. So you really had to work to get those scares, and man, did they make it work. Also in 1979, NBC had a show called Cliffhangers. It was a weekly series that had 3 different stories going on, and each story would end on, you guessed it, a cliffhanger. Well, the third and final story was The Curse of Dracula, and it starred Michael Nouri as Dracula, and it took place in San Francisco, where he was a nighttime professor. And then last but not least, you also had the great Dracula comedy Love at First Bite. Here's Blood in Your Eye. George Hamilton took his turn at playing Count Dracula, and it's just great. Count Dracula goes to New York. It's very well done. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I'm sure it's very much a movie of its time. And he also dances in a disco. So there you go. I love the nightlife. All right. Anyway. But I'm not picking any of those. I'm going with a very little remembered movie simply called Vampire. Actually, it was a TV movie, or a movie of the week, as we used to call them. And this movie was actually a pilot movie that was going to set up the TV series Vampire. Unfortunately, it never got picked up. The producer was Stephen Bochco, who created the groundbreaking cop series, Hill Street Blues. He also produced Doogie Howser, LA Law, NYPD Blue. So, little TV shows. Like The Curse of Dracula from Cliffhangers, this movie Vampire, or the series, was taking place in San Francisco. The vampire's lair is disturbed when a new church is built on that land. Soon, the vampire's hidden wealth is confiscated by the authorities, and the vampire takes out his revenge on the architect, who is also aided by a retired SFPD detective. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie. It's a good movie, and you could see what potential was there if it went to series. The movie stars Richard Lynch as the vampire, Prince Anton Wojtek, and I really liked his portrayal of the vampire. Now, some of you would know him from Rob Zombie movies. He was the principal in Halloween remake, and he was also in The Lords of Salem. He played a reverend in that. But I really liked his portrayal as the vampire because he brought a lot of different qualities to it. He kind of reminded me of how Robert Quarry portrayed Count Yorga. You could tell that he could be both seductive, and he could also just change very quickly. Also, Jason Miller, our favorite priest from The Exorcist, Father Damien. He plays the architect in this, and E.G. Marshall plays the retired police detective. And some of you would know E.G. Marshall from the original Creep Show. He was in the final movie where he was playing the germaphobe who was locked away. And, Superman 2, he was the president. Oh, God, Zod. I liked the cast. I liked how they were trying to make this work. It's too bad it didn't go. But I remember as a kid, 1979, being like, yeah, there's going to be a new vampire movie on TV. I can't wait, because I was a huge vampire fan when I was a kid. I still am. But Vampire, you can check it out, actually, on probably YouTube or maybe Vimeo. Somebody uploaded it, and it's like an old VHS copy of it. Thankfully, it's somewhere, because I don't know where else you can find it. So check it out, Vampire, from 1979. So that rounds out my list, going in reverse. Vampire from 1979, The Haunting of Julia from 1977, The Legend of Hell House from 1973, Asylum from 1972, and Where It All Began from 1970, Scars of Dracula. All right, that's going to do it for me. I would love to get your comments, and obviously you can leave those comments below, or you can email the show. But I would love to know what your thoughts are. You agree, disagree? Maybe there's a bunch you'd like to see included in Search of Darkness. Please reach out. I always love to get your feedback on my videos and podcasts. And as I begin to close down the graveyard, I wanted to remind you, because I know there are many new listeners to this program, I have a lot of interviews I've done here on the Graveyard Show podcast that you can find, and I came to the realization the other day that Shudder has about 12 to 14 movies currently streaming where I interviewed somebody from that movie. In Search of Darkness 94 to 99, In Search of Darkness Part 3, Aliens Expanded, King on Screen, the documentary on Stephen King adaptations, Cursed Films, The Passenger, PG Psycho Goreman, Scare Package, Deadstream, Off Season, The Cellar, The Amusement Park, The Cleansing Hour, and Allegoria. Those are just some of the movies that are on Shudder that I have interviewed when those movies came out. So, if you are a subscriber to Shudder or AMC Plus, and you watch those movies, you can come right back into my graveyard, and you can listen to my interviews with the producers or the director or the actors that were in those movies while it's still fresh after having just watched them, just as a little reminder. Then on the next Graveyard Show podcast, I'm going to stay in the decade of disco as I pose the question, are the 1970s the greatest decade for horror? I don't know. Is it? I may be arguing for it. I may be arguing against it. I don't know. But I will be putting up the argument one way or the other. You know, it never hurts to ask questions. Always be concerned when people tell you not to question. That's the time when you should be worried more than anything else. But anyway, on that note, again, if you missed my interview with In Search of Darkness 70s writer-director David Weiner, just go one podcast back. Check out what I have here. I have an entire In Search of Darkness wing here on the Graveyard Show podcast. If you're on the YouTube channel, George Romero wing, Women in Horror wing, Horror Host wing, all kinds of interviews, all kinds of stuff for you to listen to while you are here. Please take advantage of it. There's some great interviews that you can find here. Again, I always look forward to your comments as well. All right, that's going to do it for me. And as you exit the graveyard, I would like to remind you, as I always do, to please lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want anyone to get out. Until next time.